Greetings, beloveds, and welcome to We Keep Building, a new conservative political podcast within the Felecia Killings Foundation, hosted by yours truly. I am Coach Felecia Killings, the founder and CEO of this work and the Conscious Conservative movement. Since 2016, my work of ministry has been focused on empowering God's children with spiritual and practical knowledge of the kingdom of God and how we can inject His principles into our social, political, and economic spheres. Since that time, God has elevated my voice and platform on a national scale, and today I serve as a leadership coach, minister, and prophetic voice to thousands of people nationwide. This new podcast emerged in response to the extended direction God is leading us. Over the past few years, one of my primary practical purposes has been to help evangelicals in our traditional conservative voting bloc develop more effective strategies to sell conservatism to Black communities nationwide. These strategies included more empowering messages that proved how conservative politics can protect what we build. I've written several best-selling books around this topic and will continue to build upon that library of empowering teachings, especially as we merge into Election 2026 and Election 2028. But this time, our spiritual and practical focus will be on revival, reformation, and pure racial reconciliation based on the principles of conscious conservatism. These elements, however, will not be relegated to our religious spheres only. Rather, as is typical in evangelicalism, each element will also pierce through our social, political, and economic spaces. For this is the essence of conscious conservatism, and I will talk more about this during today's teaching. More specifically stated, this new podcast will teach evangelical leadership how to ignite revival in their churches that spur reformation and pure racial reconciliation nationwide. It will teach conservative Black American voters on the outside of the evangelical kingdom how this religious and political infrastructure works, and it will create the pathway for the evangelical alliance with conservative Black Americans, which will result in 30 to 40% of these voters selecting conservative candidates at the ballot box. On a practical political level, our mission will be accomplished as a result of the rise of Brian Kemp's national conservatism. And within each episode and session, I will lay out my spiritual and practical case for why his brand of conservative leadership is exactly what is needed nationwide in order to usher in this type of new political power play. Now, today's episode asks a critical question. How can conservatives and evangelical voters rebuild a political movement rooted in moral conviction and spiritual integrity after the collapse and demise of MAGA? I'll begin this podcast episode with a 15-minute teaching on this topic, followed by a brief word from our sponsors, and then you'll get a chance to hear an in-depth conversation that I have had with Kelvin, who is one of Georgia's rising leading conservative voices. Now let's begin. The MAGA movement began with strong promises. It promised to restore America's greatness and to defend the forgotten men and women of this nation. But over time, that promise became polluted by pride, anger, and idolatry. What started as a populist surge turned into a cult of personality. And the reason for that is because of leadership. When your leadership is full of pride, when your leadership is full of vengeance and wrath and anger, when your leadership only understands idolatry and cultish, whichever one you want to use, whenever it uses that kind of momentum, the people will inevitably fall within that same umbrella. So instead of having principled-based or principled-driven leadership, we saw personality-driven leadership and politics that rooted itself in this pride and arrogance and idolatry. Instead of moral conviction, we saw moral compromise. And as evangelicals, many of you became entangled in that compromise. You defended behavior that contradicted the very gospel you preached. You excused corruption because it came from someone you liked, or someone who promised to fight for you, or someone who embodied what you thought was God's righteous hand of vengeance and justice. Whatever your reason, needless to say, you defended corruption and got angry with the results. Now, when a movement loses its moral compass, it loses its power. And this is a message I shared with those who are a part of the grassroots work outside of evangelicalism. I said to them, do not ever lose your principles, for that is your only source of power here. When you are coming against an establishment, an evangelical establishment, complete with its infrastructure, complete with its own set of laws, I guess you could say, and leadership and donors and all, when you are coming up against an infrastructure this large and you don't have any of the things that they possess, all you have are your principles. And if you lose your principles, you have lost your power. That's essentially what we have seen from grassroots. And this is why their own movement, their own MAGA movement, has completely failed. But what happens when a movement loses its moral compass? Again, it loses its power. And the fall of MAGA is not just a political story. It is a spiritual one. It's the story of what happens when a people, especially those of you who claim to know God, who claim the name of Christ, this is what happens when a people places their faith in a man rather than in God. Now, when evangelical leaders began to tie their faith to these flawed political figures, they created a moral vacuum. You're probably thinking, Coach, well, we are all flawed. We all fall short of the glory of God. And this is very true, beloved. But the same laws and principles that God has established and commanded us to abide by, those laws should have been applied to your MAGA leadership. But you excused them. You made excuses for them. You said that they did not have to abide by the same standards that you make your children abide by, your congregation abide by. All of a sudden, those laws and principles did not have to apply to MAGA leadership. And for that reason, your witness was compromised. The church, which should have been the conscience of the nation, became a campaign arm for political agendas. You stopped preaching repentance. You started preaching partisanship. You stopped calling for righteousness and justice. You started calling for revenge. And in doing so, you lost your credibility. You lost your moral compass. You lost all authority and spiritual power. Not only with the world, but even with this next generation of evangelical believers who watched you closely. My beloved, the spiritual cost of political idolatry is immense. It weakens our witness. It distorts our message. It replaces conviction with convenience. But God is merciful. Every moral collapse creates an opportunity for renewal. The first step, however, beloved, is repentance, acknowledging where we went wrong and returning to the principles that once made our movement so strong. This is where conscious conservatism comes into play. Conscious conservatism is a spiritual, kingdom-based framework that calls upon leaders and the people to apply spiritual laws and kingdom principles to our social, political, and economic spheres. This is not a partisan ideology. In other words, conscious conservatism does not belong to the Republican Party. It is a divine strategy, and it reminds us that the kingdom of God governs every area of life. And when we align our leadership with his principles, we produce righteousness, justice, and prosperity in the land. Conscious conservatism teaches us that our politics must flow from our faith, not the other way around. It challenges us to think beyond party loyalty and to embrace kingdom loyalty. When we operate from this higher standard, we no longer chase after political power for its own sake. Instead, we use our influence to serve, to build, to heal, and to restore. This framework calls evangelical and conservative leaders to return to the fundamentals, to get back to the basics, to understand the general laws of God, such as the law of love, the law of grace, the law of truth and justice. It demands we lead with integrity, that we lead with humility and with discipline. And it reminds us that revival in the church must lead to reformation in society, in the culture. And that reformation must produce righteous governance. When we practice conscious conservatism, we become intentional about how we engage with the world, how we engage with one another, how we engage in our marriages, how we engage with our children, how we engage in society as a whole. We begin to speak truth with love. We embody the very principles that Jesus taught us. We build alliances that are rooted in these shared moral, conservative values. We empower families to thrive economically and spiritually. And we demonstrate that conservative principles, when guided by kingdom wisdom, can bring restoration to our communities and reconciliation to our nation. This is the call of conscious conservatism, to awaken the conscience of the conservative movement and to rebuild it upon the unshakable foundation of God's kingdom. So how do we rebuild, beloved? The death of MAGA does not mean the death of conservatism. It means we have a chance to resurrect it, to make it stronger, to make it wiser, to make it more principled than ever before. But first, we must recommit to the moral clarity and truth-telling that is found only in the ancient text. This means stop defending what is indefensible. This means speak truth even when it might cost you some influence. My beloved, the world is hungry for leaders who are honest, not opportunistic. Secondly, we must build alliances with individuals, with groups who share our values, not based on political personalities, but actual values. And this must extend beyond racial and ethnic boundaries. Our alliances should be based upon the principles like faith, family, freedom, but more importantly, the principles of God. Not individuals who shout the loudest or who command the biggest following. No, beloved, it must be based upon building alliances with individuals who share the same values. And that includes your conservative Black American brothers and sisters. Individuals who today represent the largest Christian bloc in this country. Now, you might say, Coach, that's a little bit extreme because aren't evangelicals the largest voting bloc? And yes, we are. But I'm talking about actually practicing the laws of God, not compromising the laws of God. We'll dive more into that as we continue with these teachings. The third step towards rebuilding is to train the next generation of leaders to think critically and to act righteously. My beloved, we need more young conservatives who understand that leadership is about service. It's not about them becoming the next celebrity. We must equip them with that wisdom and not just with rhetoric. And that is what you are responsible for doing, even within your own spheres of influence. Now, if we do these things, or as I like to say all the time, if we learn how to do things God's way, we will always get his results. So if we do these things God's way, we will see a moral resurrection in our movement. The death of MAGA, which I am grateful for, but I digress, is not the end of conservatism. It is a beginning of its moral rebirth. So as we move forward, remember this: God is not finished with the conservative movement. He is refining it. That's what happens when fire is here. It purges away the dross. It takes away the residue. It removes all the things that don't belong, and it purifies the valuable ones, the minerals. You get what I'm trying to say here? That's where we are at. It is refining it. And as this is happening, God is calling us back to righteousness, to truth, to pure purpose. But my question to you, beloved, is, will you answer that call? Hey, beloveds, welcome back. I'm so excited to bring you my guest speaker. His name is Kelvin King, and he and I are going to have such a wonderful conversation. And I really pray that as we go through some of these topics, you'll be able to see how the lessons I was teaching you in the beginning of this episode really begin to play out. So without further ado, allow me to welcome Sir Kelvin King. Kelvin, it is so good to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
Thank you so much, Felicia. I'm doing great. I mean, I actually appreciate you inviting me to your podcast. My wife and I, we do admire your work, and we like to see Christians who are committed to help and expand God's glory, and I think that's what you do here. So yeah, it's pretty encouraging.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So I was sharing with your wife a couple months ago. I said, I need to get Kelvin in front of spiritual leadership. And the reason for that is because the way we do things in evangelicalism is whatever our spiritual leadership kind of dictates politically, the people just run with it. And so I was like, as we are teaching the people about politics, about spiritual matters, I'm like, it's so important that we have conservative candidates who exemplify, like really exemplify, because there's lots of people who will see our lexicon, they'll see our message, and then they'll try and steal it, trying to manipulate the people. And I'm like, enough of that. Like, we
Yeah,
cannot continue this.
yeah.
So it's just been so important. So when I found out, when I saw on Twitter that you were running for
hmm
Secretary of State, I said, yes, let's go. I'm so
Yeah.
excited.
Well,
So
I'm definitely going to bring something different to the seat. So.
yeah. So let's start by talking about who you are. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your upbringing, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. I'm Kelvin King. I'm born and raised right here in Georgia. I'm a Georgia boy. I was born in 1974. I'll be 52 this year. It was all unplanned and all out of God's order. My mom was only 15. My dad was 18, and they did marry though. So they tried to do the right thing, and we moved from Macon to Atlanta area, Cobb County, when I was about 8 years old or so, and then from that point on, I think my dad just kind of got caught up in the fast life of Atlanta and drug usage, domestic violence, a lot of things. It was not a spiritual home. It wasn't, obviously it wasn't. And things kind of went off the rails. He ended up, going to prison, and it was just my
Mhm.
mom and my sister and I for the most part. But we had a lot of love and a lot of support.
Yeah.
When you hear stories like this, you always hear about a grandmother stepping in or a grandfather
Yes.
stepping in. Well, that's what happened with me. My grandmother stepped in and she helped with money and food, and I had a relatively normal upbringing. We didn't have a lot of resources, but we had a lot of love.
Yeah.
And I was able to stay focused in school. I was a pretty sharp student. I was part of the gifted program, and graduated high school with honors. And I got an appointment to the Air Force Academy. I was a pretty good football player at the same time, so I played football at the Air Force Academy, and that was just a unique experience. And God really blessed me to be able to do something like that. It changed my life. That's a school that's very hard to get into, and it's a lot of really smart people that go to that school, and very competitive. They're one of the most competitive schools in the country. And I was just thankful to be able to not just get in, but to also finish. And I'm grateful to God for that.
Yeah.
And what else? I guess the biggest part of that part of my life is that I too followed in my parents' footsteps. I fathered a child out of wedlock.
Mm.
In college, I fathered a son, and My story is a little bit different. It was challenging for the most part of his life, but once he moved out of his mother's home and went, became a young man, our relationship just grew. I mean, it was remarkable how it flourished, and he ended up going into the Air Force like his dad, and I made me proud. And he ended up coming to work for his dad's company. I'll get into that in just a second. I'm a licensed general contractor,
Hmm.
and he's been doing outstanding. And he gave his life to the Lord in 2021 or 2022. It was when I was
Wonderful.
running for U.S. Senate.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, it's just so fortunate, and God just kind of shows like once you're faithful, like if you act outside of His will, I mean, there is consequences,
Yeah.
but if you repent and you restructure your life and you walk in your way, He's faithful, and that's what He's shown me in my life. I love talking about my story, to be honest with you. I don't
Yeah.
want to bore you, but man, it's so many
No.
God moments. Jeez Louise.
Yeah. I
But
love it. Go ahead.
but
Continue.
but now my son he's married, no children. Well, that's not true. He's married. He's been married for a little over a year, and they just had their first baby last weekend, last
Congrats.
Thursday. So they're doing things the right way. He made me a proud grandfather, and made my wife Janelle a proud grandmother, and it's just kind of cool to watch how with my father and me, we kind of went off the scales a little bit, and then
Hmm.
I adjusted my life.
Hmm.
That played a role in my son's life adjusting, and now they're back on the right track. And it's
Yeah.
just, I mean, it's a really cool story of just recovering and faith and that sort of thing. But let me go back a quick moment. After I
Mhm.
graduated the academy, I went into the real Air Force, and I was a contracting officer. I served for 5 years. I did really well, but like I said, I had a son in Atlanta, and I needed to get back here.
Mm.
So I got out of the military, came back here, and from that point on, I just, I worked in corporate America. I had a lot of success working in corporate America. I won a lot of awards and
Mm.
magazines and that sort of thing. And I felt kind of good about my professional career, so good that I was like, man, maybe I could start my own business one day.
Nice.
So, so the entrepreneurial bug bit me about 14, 15 years ago.
Mm.
And I saved up money for a couple years, and I ended up starting my own construction company. And I started
Mhm.
it from scratch by myself in a bedroom of my home.
Mm.
And after that first year, I made enough money to move to the basement of my home. And in the
Mhm.
basement, we built it out, and I started hiring people and W-2 like real employees.
Okay.
And now I have three offices one office in Kentucky, one office in Tennessee, and one office here in Georgia. I have 30 employees, over 300
Wow.
subcontractors that work for me and that are contracted under my contracts. That allows us to be responsive and service clients all across the state of Georgia, and obviously a little bit in Tennessee and a little bit in Kentucky as well.
Yeah.
So that's the summary of my professional background and how I came to be. I During that period of time, I did meet someone that changed my life again. About
Yeah.
8 years ago, 7 years ago, I met a young lady
Hmm.
in politics, and
Okay.
and I can I
By the way, I just love her so much. That's why I'm all giddy, but go ahead.
But I guess I can transition to my whole the politics side because
Okay.
I haven't been in politics my whole life. I actually was raised on the Democrat side, like a lot of
Hmm.
black families. We were
Hmm.
Democrats, and in college, I started learning about like Black history. I mean,
Hmm.
I was driven. I'm sure you went through that phase. I mean, most of us go through the phase where we really want to consume as much as we can
Yeah.
about, our race and our history here in America. And I was doing a lot of that in college. And in fact, I did so much that I started buying into it. I'm like, man, these people are great. But the people I
Yeah.
bought into led me to an opposite party. So the people I
Okay.
bought into were people like Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass. I'm like, man, Booker T is the man. Like, I believe in what he says, right?
Yeah.
So I had these, I call them maybe latent Republican qualities or conservative
Okay.
qualities, being uh, under the costume of black culture or whatever you want to call it. But
Yeah.
the inside was really conservative principles because that's how you make it in America, in my opinion. So in college is when I first voted for a Republican.
Okay.
I voted for, well, right after college, I voted for for Bush, but I had voted for Clinton right before, 4 years prior.
Okay.
So that was my transition, was right in college. And from that point on, I've been
Right.
only Republican. And as you know, once you become a Republican, a lot of your friends and family, they start challenging you and they start
Hmm.
questioning, are you sure about this? And you know they don't love you over there. You know they're
Yeah.
racist over there, or whatever terms you want to use. A lot of that hit me. And what happens at that point is that you just kind of step back, you kind of tighten up your belt, and you develop responses and you do your homework. You make sure that your positions are solid because you don't want to be called out in front of your friends. You don't want to be embarrassed.
Yeah.
So, so I knew what I was
Right.
talking about, man. I did so much research on my position, so I feel really good now whenever I have conversations with the opposing party. But anyhow, that's a that's kind of a long story of my Republican journey. But in 2016. That is when I actually got a little bit more involved with the Republican Party. I used to just argue with
Okay.
people, but in 2016, I thought that Donald Trump was the only candidate that could beat Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
regardless of what people thought about him or her or what have you, at the time, I wanted a Republican to win. And I looked at
Hmm.
the field. There were people that I liked in that field. I mean,
Hmm.
lots of people that were good in that field. But frankly, at the time, I just thought that you had to fight Hillary like a man. And I
Mm.
know that sounds really weird, but you got to fight.
Yeah.
And fighting is okay. It's okay. I mean, the Bible talks about how we are supposed to go to war. Look at Deuteronomy. So I mean, it's not a
Yeah.
bad thing to fight. You just have to make sure you're
Yeah.
fighting for the Lord. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought Trump was the only one that could fight and that would fight. So I voted
Hmm.
for him, and from that point on, I've been a really staunch Republican. I don't always agree with Trump's position. Don't get me wrong. I mean,
Right. Right.
but but that's kind of how I turned into the party. And as I became more involved with the party, a buddy of mine was like, "Hey man, you need to meet someone.
Okay.
There's someone that you should meet." And the reason but the reason why he wanted me to meet was because I was in construction and she had some construction questions. Uh,
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah. And then he said, "But but y'all have the same political position, so you may like that as well."
Okay.
And
Okay.
it was Janelle. And I met her just as a friend initially. I was helping her out with some questions on construction, and we were just kind of friends for the
Hmm.
first year and a half or so. And we just enjoyed talking with each other so much. And I just kept calling her, and she was calling me. And then the presidential cycle came, so we had more things to talk about, and it came and went. Excuse me, and
Yeah.
we just enjoyed hanging out. And I
Yeah.
enjoyed hanging out with her so much that I would change my calendar and I was try to work around her and making sure that we always talked at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for whatever reason. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, it just kind of grew. And I knew the Lord was like, dude, this is the lady I put in front of you, and you
Mm.
see that it's good for you because you're spending all your free time and extra time with it. Just
Yeah.
just go ahead and commit.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
So that's how Janelle and I got together, and it was a great meeting. It's a great match. I truly believe
Hmm.
that she's my rib, and we work really well together. She's smart and she's aggressive and she's loving. And I
Yeah.
tell people that together we're great. She's really the heart of this
Hmm.
of this duo, and I'm more of the logic, the mind, the brain
Yeah.
of the duo of the duo. So she's working on my feelings a little bit. I'm not really that emotional or that sort of thing. I just make decisions, and how turns
Yeah.
out, it turns out. I just make the best decisions with the best information possible.
Yeah, I love it.
So,
That's awesome. Such a wonderful story. And even as you were talking, like I've been raised Republican evangelical my whole life. I don't know anything
oh,
else. But my father came into Republicanism at the height of the moral majority during the early 1980s. And so when he
okay,
became Republican, I was just like 1 year old. That was
okay,
it. So like this is all I know. And so, like, when I hear stories about other Black Republicans, I'm like, oh, you sound like dad and his experience. That's not my experience, but his dad's experience.
okay,
And it's just really amazing because kind of everybody who merged from the Democrat side over to this side have a similar story. Like, I did some kind of research here. I found out,
yeah,
like, oh, we were actually Republicans. You know what I mean? And so that kind of awakening happens, and it's
yeah,
insane to hear that
yeah.
that transition. And so,
And it's
yeah, just
encouraging. It was
yeah,
it was encouraging for me to read about these people, particularly Booker T and watching it,
yeah,
because he was enslaved, similar to Frederick Douglass, and he just kind of explained, yeah, slavery was bad. It was
Yeah.
horrible, but freedom is much better.
Yeah.
And he gave great insight in the dynamics of those who weren't comfortable leaving, and those who wanted to come
Yeah.
back, and those who made their own, those who used skills and that sort of thing to make their. It's such a unique time period and so many
Yeah.
different stories, and that's why you can't just lock things up into
Right.
one story and say, hey, it was all hell and every white person is bad and every black person is good, and it was
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
that's the opposite of the reality of it. And I think more of us, more people need to understand the true history of America and
Yeah.
how it was just such to use a corny term, a cornucopia of people and backgrounds
Mhm.
and stories, and even
Mhm.
even the American Revolution. It was just so unique. People don't even know that black people fought
Yeah.
for both sides, the
Right.
Patriots
Right.
and for Britain. I mean, it's just we need to educate ourselves, and that way, I think it'll create a little bit better understanding of how to interact with each other today too.
Yeah, especially politically, because when we're
Hmm.
talking about Black conservatism, one thing I highlight to my audience is like the majority of Black Americans are actually conservative. They just don't vote Republican. And I
Yeah,
said, there's a reason for this. So we're going to have to figure this out, evangelicals, because you could
we're gonna
actually
change that, Felicia.
right, right. Like we could actually have a really strong Black evangelical, Black conservative, Black Republican voting bloc over here.
Yes.
That, in my opinion, I talk about dual domination and the balancing of political power. So Black voters should not think to themselves, well, the Republican is in office here, so I'm not going to get anything. I'm not going to get any
Right.
help. I'm not going to be protected. And I'm like, that's a very limited thinking.
No.
Whereas
Yeah.
if they can see that, or we actually have strong representation over here, we have Black power brokers over here on the
Hmm.
Republican side, like we're solid. We
Yeah.
know Black conservatives are going to take care of us. We know, you know what I'm saying? So that balance has to be present. But before that
Hmm.
happens, I'm like, I got to get spiritual leadership to really understand that in order to bridge racial reconciliation, they cannot just adopt Black progressivism because they talk about that a lot, but they come
Yes.
from a very different perspective, which is very destructive. I said
Yes.
you have to have a different approach, and that's what I do with conscious conservatism.
Okay.
Like if you employ this, then you'll be able to get racial reconciliation without all of the progressivism, without all of this. Hey, did you know white people? You're the oppressor. Like we're not going to do that. You know what I mean? So it's like this is why I'm like, okay, as soon as I see candidates who are solid, I'm like, I gotta bring them so that they can see it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? As
You-
opposed to just feeling it. Go
I
ahead.
just don't want to put any mental constraints or mental roadblocks. Your mind is very powerful, right?
Yeah.
And it typically leads your actions. And if you're thinking like you're oppressed or someone's oppressing you, or if you're thinking like you can't do something because someone's keeping it from you or holding you back, you've already lost. I
Yeah.
mean, you hadn't started strongly. You're starting from a defeated position. And if you just kind of just shift your mindset, just say, hey, what if I could achieve just as
Yeah.
well as anybody else could achieve? Like, what if I could learn just as well as somebody else can learn? Like, what if I can save just like
Yeah.
anybody else can save? Like, what if I can live below my means just as well as anybody else can live below their means? So now that I'm learning, I'm saving, I'm living below my means, I'm actually getting a leg up in our economy. Now I feel like, wow, I have something of substance that I own now. Maybe I
Yeah.
can buy some more stuff and own. Like, so it's incremental and it takes time, but it starts right here. You have
Yeah.
to think and know it first. And I think the Bible is a good place to
Yeah.
start. Man, I don't want to start rallying scriptures, but if you tell me,
No, go,
man, I
go,
will.
go. It's good. It's
But I mean,
really good.
okay, a fundamental scripture that I use in my family. This is something that my family lives on, and that is Matthew 25:14. And I was talking about it earlier. It's the parable of the talents. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that is something that it was close. It was important for me in my walk because I'm very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I've been blessed, and I'm out here in the race with all the talented people. And sometimes you may wonder, man, I wonder if I'm fit for it or if I'm cut out, or maybe it's a little risky. All those moments of doubt comes in your mind. That's
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
And when you look at Matthew 25:14, it sums it all up, right?
Yeah.
Different servants got different amounts of talents, just like we
Yeah.
all have different skills. God gives us different things. but we're supposed to use it,
Yeah.
do something with it, go and trade with it, make his, spread his glory and share, like do something. Don't just sit. Because if you just sit on it like that third servant did,
Mm-hmm.
he sat on his one. He only had one. He said, Master, I knew you were, you reaped where you didn't sow, and you were, powerful and strong. So I hid it. So here it is. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that is a lesson in and of itself, because first of all, you hid it. That means you're a coward, and cowardice is a sin. You look at Revelations.
Yep.
Cowardice is a sin. Secondly, you didn't even do what God told you to do, so you're disobedient. And
Yeah.
thirdly, the value of that talent went down because the master was gone for a long time. So
Yeah.
over a long time, inflation happens. So that one talent wasn't worth the same amount when God gave it to you. So of course, take it away from you and give it to the person with the most talents. And then he
Mm-hmm.
cast them out, and it's going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So I just summed up really what's the driver in my house and my family. We just want to
Mm-hmm.
do what God has blessed us to be able to do. Like we want to
Yeah.
be obedient servants. And that's
Yeah.
that's why I'm running for Secretary of State.
Very nice. I love it. I could feel your passion. And I know, the audience is going to be like, you know what? I didn't see this on Fox. I didn't see him doing this. And that's why I was like, I got to get him for like a really good full,
Okay.
teaching and podcast episode. Cause I was
Yeah.
like, there's something there that we just got to.
Well, this is a little bit more relaxed setting.
Yeah.
I'm not cut out. I'm really not the, like my wife is really good in front of the camera. She is awesome. She has skill.
Uh-huh.
That ain't me. Uh, what I what I'm good at is executing. I get things done. I can start a business. I can run a business. I can recover, turn
Hmm.
around a business. Discipline approaches. Like that's what I do. I'm an executor, and I get things done. I do what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't come across as clean and polished or entertaining.
Yeah.
I'm not an entertainer. I don't want to be
Right.
an entertainer. I just want to
Right.
get stuff done.
Yeah, very nice. This brings us into talking about Secretary of State. So, for the majority of voters, like
Hmm.
they know presidential elections and maybe mayoral elections, but it's like, these other different elections, these other different offices. So, let's
Yeah.
talk about Secretary of State. Now, first of all, why did you want that position? And then talk to us about how important this position
Okay.
is especially in Georgia.
Yeah. Well, I didn't necessarily want this position. Okay.
Okay.
Just so you know, actually, I was led to this position.
Okay.
I do want to serve. I wanted to serve. I ran for U.S. Senate a few years ago because I thought I was the only candidate that could defeat Raphael Warnock. I just didn't think he
Mhm.
had the right message for America, Georgia, nor our black community. So I thought I could beat him. And
Mhm.
but Herschel Walker had different plans, and it didn't really work out that well for us.
Yes. Wait, pause for a second because I was on Twitter and I said, "Oh my God, the guy is Kelvin King. You guys, what are you doing with Herschel?" But let's not replay.
It's
Oh,
okay. God had a plan. Like I said, my son found Jesus during my race, so it was a
yeah.
win for
Oh,
my
very
family.
nice.
But we didn't just go away. We continued to do outreach. We
Yeah.
started a pack that did outreach to minority communities, trying to spread conservative messaging. We had Let's Win for America. We had Speak Georgia. Those are packs that we started just to kind of stay out there to get people to kind of see there's options here. It's just not the Democrat Party for you, y'all. So we continued
Yeah.
to do that. And then my wife was selected by the Speaker of the House here in Georgia. His name is John Burns. She was selected by him to serve on the state elections board. Now, we didn't have any information or experience, or we didn't even know John Burns that well, but
Mm-hmm.
we knew that it was an opportunity. And
Mm-hmm.
we don't turn down opportunity when it's in line with our plans. It is in line with our spirit in terms of where God is leading us. So we felt good about it.
Mm-hmm.
And Janelle jumped on it, and she did an outstanding job, a tremendous
Mm-hmm.
job. But more than anything, it allowed me to see the
Okay.
dysfunction that exists in our Secretary of State's office.
Okay.
Before she took that seat on the board, I was just believing what the media said. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Brad Raffensperger. I mean, I had questions. I did have
Mm-hmm.
questions on the elections because I'm pretty good with numbers, and the numbers weren't adding up.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know it was such in bad disarray. And
Mm.
now I've seen the lack of answers that
Okay.
that that the Secretary of State's office provides to the citizens, the lack of answers that they're providing to the state elections board. I've also seen a lot of cases of election irregularities, hundreds, Felicia.
Okay.
I mean, this is not I'm not, this is, you can go look it up and you can see that
Yeah.
the past meetings, hundreds of election irregularity cases that had been sat on by the
Mm.
Secretary of State's office. It was
Okay.
not being pushed over to the state elections board. So over the last year and a half, they've had hundreds of cases that they had to work through in backlog. And these are
Hmm.
real issues. Yeah, most of them were probably situations that could be cleaned up that
Hmm.
weren't as detrimental. But there are a few cases that were detrimental where elections were not done correctly.
Mm.
And I can get into those details too. I don't want to waste people's times, but there were bad elections in DeKalb County. There were bad elections in the city of Oakwood, and there clearly in Fulton County there was a bad election in Fulton County in 2020. If that was not the case, we would not have all this interest from the FBI here in Fulton County right now.
Hmm.
Clearly there was some irregularities. So when I saw that, I knew I had to do something. There's
Okay.
no other person better positioned in the state of Georgia than myself to go out and win this race and turn around the Secretary of State's office. The
Mm.
Secretary of State's office is responsible for three major things. First, they oversee elections in our state.
Okay. Hmm.
Two, the Secretary of State's office is responsible for business formations and business licensing. So every
Okay.
business that operates in Georgia has to go through the Secretary of State's office. So
Yeah.
this office impacts every single individual that works in Georgia, clearly. And then the
Hmm.
third thing is that they're responsible for administering the Georgia Securities Act. Basically, they put together the rules around how companies are supposed to act and behave that take your money and invest your money. So
Hmm.
retirement money and savings, our seniors when they want to put their money into safe investment vehicles, the Secretary of State's office is responsible for overseeing, managing those those companies throughout the state.
Mm.
And that hasn't been so I can just kind of sum up the
Yeah.
performance. Obviously, elections that hasn't gone well here in Georgia because we have more than half of our state that doesn't think that our elections are clean.
Hmm.
Obviously, business formations isn't going all that well because when I announced back in the end of the summer to run for Secretary of State, I got phone calls from several dozens of companies, dozens of people, several companies complaining about, man, I hope you fix the phone system there because I can't reach people. Oh, I
Mm.
hope you fix the licensing because it's taking so long for my license to get back. I hope you fix the website because it's
Mm.
crap. It doesn't help with us. We can't navigate it. And I got dozens of people asking me for help and pointing
Mm.
out those shortcomings. And I just knew that I had to do something,
Yeah.
Felicia.
Yeah.
When you have the capability, the understanding, the will, the finances, like if you have everything in
Yeah.
place to do something and it's to help,
Yeah.
like that is what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's my utilizing my talents. I'm putting
Yeah.
my talents at play right now. So that's really what took me to this seat. When you look at the candidates in my competition, I'm the only person in this race that served in the military, meaning I have the right kind of discipline. In
Hmm.
fact, I'm going to implement the Air Force core values in the
Okay.
Secretary of State's office. It's going to be about integrity first, service
Hmm.
before self, and excellence in all we do. Those are the Air Force core values. Those are going to be the new core values of the Secretary of State's office when I'm Secretary of State.
Very
And
good.
we also have to make sure that our voting system is has integrity. Let me put
Okay.
it that way.
Okay.
And if you like, we can kind of transition into why that's important.
Yeah, let's pause right there because I have never heard anybody explain this position or office the way you did. Because to us on the outside of the entire infrastructure, it's like, okay, well, this person is just going to make sure that the elections are solid. Like, there's no discussion about the business
The
side, and
business side, come
you
on,
know what I mean?
that's
Yeah.
huge.
And so I'm like, oh, that's really, really interesting. And I want, spiritual leadership. This is the thing about them is that when we are talking politics in our church, and mind you, we get it all the time. Like
Okay.
politics, religion, married together, there's no separation of church and state for us. And I'm like, we have to get to the point where we are selecting candidates who are not just spirit minded, but they're also intellectually and politically astute. So that means that we can't just say, oh, this person is a Christian and let's go vote for them. Or this person is saying the things we want to hear, let's go vote for them. Like, do they actually know what they're talking about?
Right. Oh my
So
goodness.
that's why I'm like, oh my gosh, he brought up something completely. I had never even known that there was just all of these other details embedded with that position. And as I'm listening to you, I'm like, this would be really great if, more candidates were willing to explain the details
Yeah.
of this job office, if that makes sense, to help voters say, you know what, let me say yes to this person, because not only does he know what he's talking about, but he's helping me to understand. And I think that's the gap between evangelical establishment and grassroots, or like
Hmm.
MAGA or former Tea
Hmm.
Party or whatever.
Hmm.
Like, you guys are not talking to them about what's happening behind the scenes, or at least giving some kind of education so that
Yeah,
they
I
can
agree.
vote confidently and say,
Right.
okay, yeah, let me choose this person, versus, this kind of populist narrative, like, I'm going to take over, I'm going to defeat the establishment. Like, all of that stuff is fine, but not for evangelical voters who are like, we really need to know what's going on. And that's one of the things I
Yep.
love about you and Janelle. Like, you guys value, the voices coming from grassroots, as
Yep.
well as saying, hey, you over here in establishment, like, you have to do more than just say we're going to run things and that's that. It's like,
Hmm.
no, let's talk a little bit more about this, the educational aspect of it.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
What I say is that an educated voter is our best supporter. So I
Yeah.
want our voters to know what the role is, because I think they'll see that I'm the most competent person to fulfill this role. You know,
Yeah.
this race, I didn't finish my thought earlier, but
Oh, go ahead.
in terms of what differentiates me, I'm the only candidate that has served, and my service relates to this role almost perfectly. I was a contracting officer in the Air Force. That means
Mm,
I was responsible for government spending, developing
mm,
contracts, doing RFPs, reviewing scopes of work. And it's a unique role because it's the only authorized representatives of the federal government that can spend your tax dollars. So I had really, really high responsibility at a young age.
mm-hmm,
And it built a sense of discipline and a character that you have to have in a role like this. And our voting system, believe it or not, it's under a contract, right? And
mm-hmm,
it expires. It's a 10-year contract that was written in 2019, our voting system. So it expires in 2029.
mm-hmm,
So when I talk about what value I can bring to this race and this seat, it's not just my military background. It's not just my business background. I'm the only candidate that has a business with employees in this race.
mm,
So
mm,
so you need someone with that level of understanding.
yeah.
But I'm going to be responsible for developing our new voting system. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm also going to be responsible for getting out of our current one because the current one doesn't work that well. And I can give you let me give you a quick snippet as to
Yeah, go for it.
my platform and why my platform is what it is. So I'm running on election integrity. And
Okay.
a lot of election integrity people support my campaign. The evangelicals support my campaign. The MAGA supports my campaign. The Tea Party supports my campaign. Even the establishment, some
Yeah.
establishment Republicans support my campaign because it's just a campaign of common sense.
Yeah.
So this is the common sense. Georgia requires that the law of
Mm-hmm.
Georgia requires that every voter must be able to verify their selection on paper when they vote. So they've got to be able to see a piece of paper and they say, "Yep, that's who I voted for,"
Okay.
before they cast their vote. Currently, right now, we have a electronic voting system where you check in at the precinct with your ID. You give the
Mm-hmm.
ID to the people at the precinct at the check-in desk. They take your ID. They make sure you're a valid voter, a registered voter. You're voting in the right location and that sort of thing. They give you
Mm-hmm.
a card to insert to walk over to a machine and insert this card into a machine. That that displays your ballot. It's called a ballot marking device. So the screen pops up and you have all the races on the screen and you select, let's just say
Mm-hmm.
Secretary of State, you select Kelvin King.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hit print ballot.
Okay.
The ballot comes out of the printer. And that is your chance to review and verify and validate who you voted for. In fact, it does have text on the bottom of the ballot. It shows who you voted for in text,
Okay.
but it also has a QR code. And when you take that piece of paper into the scanner, and the lady says, "Wait a second," and once you hear it click, that means it's counted.
Mm-hmm.
The scanner is not. It doesn't read the text. The
Okay.
scanner only reads the QR code.
Okay.
And the QR code is supposed to be a representation of the index of the candidates in that race. So the QR code has a like a one, two, three, four if it's four candidates, and
Mm-hmm.
if it's alphabetical, I might be the third candidate in my race,
Mm-hmm.
and it should show that the third person was selected. That's how it works. So it doesn't. So currently, we're not following the law the way we vote right now because you can't verify your selection because you can't read a
Mm.
QR code.
Right.
You're just assuming that the QR code is accurate. And you
Okay.
can't make that assumption because there's been evidence that the QR code sometimes is thrown off.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, in 2022, in DeKalb County, right here, there's a lady
Mm-hmm.
named Michelle Long Spears. In her election, she ended up getting third place.
Okay.
She challenged that election because she thought she won, or she
Mm-hmm.
thought she did better because what she found out was she had zero votes tallied for her on election day in her
Mm.
precinct, excuse me, in her precinct.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I know I voted for myself, so she can't have zero election day
Right.
votes.
Right. Right.
So she challenged the Secretary of State's office. They did a hand recount,
Mm-hmm.
found out that she wasn't in third place. She won that election. Yeah,
Hmm.
Google Michelle Long Spears, that
Okay.
scenario. That
Okay.
happened because the Secretary of State's office said it was a coding error.
Okay.
And to me, that's not good enough. If the people like the election workers wouldn't have found it,
Mm-hmm.
the the
Right.
the uh, the Secretary of State didn't even find it. It
Mm.
had to be found because it was a mistake from a disenchanted candidate.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a backstory, and there's other examples of how the failures of this system isn't really helping our voting confidence.
Right.
Because of that, my position is that we need to go to hand marked paper ballots, and the
Okay.
reason why is because again, the law of Georgia says that you always have to be able to go back to an original source document during voting.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the original source document can be that hand marked paper ballot. Now you can slide them into a counter and count the ballots and that sort of thing, but you're gonna always have an original source document of a hand marked paper ballot under a King administration. That way, you will always have accurate results.
Okay.
So that is why I have my position with paper ballots. A lot of times people say, "Hey, paper ballots," but they don't
Mhm.
explain it.
Yeah.
And then they say, "Well, why would I want to do paper ballots? We have a machine that's more efficient."
Yeah.
Well, the reason why is we want accuracy, not
Yeah.
speed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's
and
very
I'm
interesting.
Does you have any questions around that? Because there's a part too, because we got to clean up the voter rolls too. The voter
Okay.
rolls are important because we don't need people that aren't qualified to vote to mistakenly vote or
Okay.
even intentionally vote,
Okay.
and they're not supposed to vote.
What do you mean by that? Let's
So,
elaborate a little bit more on that one for me.
all right, so voter rolls are registered voters that's voted in the past, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you register to vote, and it's a list of voters. And over time, that changes because people move out
Right.
of districts, people move out of states, people die. Um, different things happen
Right.
where you have to update it, or you may not be eligible to vote.
Okay.
Well, if you don't continually update your voter rolls and keeping them fresh and
Mm-hmm.
purging, old ones and making sure that people aren't on your roll that was born in 1900,
Yeah.
you you got to do routine maintenance on them.
Okay.
We haven't been doing routine maintenance. Our voter rolls are bloated. We have several
Mm-hmm.
people that were born in 1900 on our voter rolls. We have out of state people. We have uh,
Mm-hmm.
um, non-citizens.
Mm-hmm.
We have all of that on our voter rolls right now, and I know it's true because the issues come up in the state elections board. I mean, recently someone from Bahamas, she had voted several times, and she's like, "Well, I mean, I'm not a citizen, but I voted, so she should go
Mm.
to jail, right?" I mean,
Yeah.
we have to do things. We have to have consequences to bad actions, and we
Uh-huh.
can't just gloss over it and say that we have the most secure elections in the country because it's not true. We
Mm-hmm.
can fix our elections, and I have a plan to do that. Just
Uh-huh.
those couple examples should be able to help us fix that. And I have other examples too of things I'm going to do. But
Yeah.
those two,
Those are
two,
good
yeah.
ones.
Hmm.
Those are good ones, especially because, well, I'm going back, I'm thinking about 2022.
Okay.
And I'm also thinking about the Democrat messaging that came to Black voters, which was with the increase of voting laws in Georgia, that this is like Jim Crow 2.0. And things along that nature. So, like, what do you say to Black voters? Because I also have them in my audience as well. What do you say to them about, you know, trying to address election
Yeah,
integrity while not also putting up these kind of barriers that,
right.
Democrats or progressives have said, Republicans are out here trying to make it harder for you to vote. Look at what they're doing. And you get what I'm saying? Like, how do you
Yeah.
balance this
I
kind of,
tell you what, let's look at it from a different perspective, right?
okay.
So, what if there's a candidate that you really, really wanted to win, and you got the grassroots together? It's a small race, so small numbers will change the direction, and all of a sudden, your guy that you got the whole community behind, they lost by 15 votes,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you find out that there were 50 people who were not even qualified to vote, um, that didn't live in the precinct, that voted in your election.
Mm.
When you feel sort of
Yeah.
like handled, suppressed,
Yeah.
stolen, the election was stolen from you,
Yeah.
well, that's what's happening. That's what happened in the city of Oakwood in Hall County. So when
Mm-hmm.
people talk about suppressing the votes, what about the people whose votes now, because of illegal people voting, it minimizes their vote or cancels out their vote?
Mm-hmm.
That's just as bad, right?
Yeah.
And then you look, so look at that perspective, and then look at the data, the
Yeah.
evidence. The evidence shows that the black vote and the minority vote has increased
Right.
every election cycle.
Right. Right.
So, so, so w- it's hard to really take seriously the voter suppression argument,
Right.
when we have so many early voting days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have different methods to vote,
Mm-hmm.
and our voting participation rates are steadily increasing.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So, so, so I personally think, sort of the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I only want people to vote who want to vote.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want people who just because you get your driver's license, now I'm registered to vote. I disagree with that. I
Mm.
think it should be an opt-in option,
Mm.
to vote versus you automatically being registered to vote. The,
Mm-hmm.
the reason why is because it muddies the voter rolls. And
Mm-hmm.
something like this happened at a state elections board meeting where there was a felon who did not know that they had been registered to vote,
Mm.
and they weren't supposed to vote.
Okay.
And they had gotten a driver's license, and they were
Mm-hmm.
registered to vote automatically.
Right. Right.
And that's not fair because that guy can be indicted,
Mm.
for breaking the law.
Mm.
So it's a couple different ways of looking at this, but I want
Mm.
people to look at it with clear eyes, and I
Right.
want to educate people to see all the different perspectives and what has to be evaluated and weighed before you take these positions. So, um, I'm saying a lot just to say that I just hope people look at these arguments and say, "Hey, listen, what is the data saying?
Yeah.
How easy is it for me to vote? How
Mm-hmm.
easy is it for the people that I know to vote?"
Mm-hmm.
And if there's no issues,
Mm-hmm.
I think you just kind of chill out for a minute and just kind of work
Yeah.
with the system and just try to make it more accurate.
Right, right. Oh my gosh, this has been such an amazing
Mhm.
educational chat with you. Like I'm kind of like in the middle of, do I ask a question or do I teach a little bit, like so
You can
so
ask,
I'm
you can ask
really
whatever you want. You can have me on again. You can
yeah,
have both of us
I
on if you
have to.
want, because my
I
wife
have
gives a unique insight too. But
yeah.
we're here to serve. We're available.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm like, I gotta get him back again. But like, I just want to hit very briefly on the last segment,
Okay.
because I know that it's impossible for people to look at you and say, that's not a Black Republican, that's not a Black conservative, right?
No, I'm highly melanated.
Right, right. It's like we have to, whenever I can get really great candidates, I'm like, I want to talk about the culture of conservative politics, the culture
Okay.
of Black conservatism and whatnot. I just want to get your perspective. Like, what is it like to be a Black conservative during this time and era? Because, like I mentioned earlier, my father came into it during the early 1980s with a moral majority. You're
Yeah.
coming into it, though, on the rise and stuff. So, talk to us about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think morality is a winning argument. I think um, the evangelical perspective is a strong argument. I think economics is a strong argument too.
Yeah.
Um, I just my experience is that Republican ideas or Republican ideals are more in line with increasing commerce and
Mm.
enterprise and the opportunity to make a living for yourself. So I don't subscribe to the idea that government needs to provide opportunities for you.
Mm.
I'm on the other side. I think the government needs to just allow us to run on our own and figure it out because we've shown, like we being the black community, we've shown time and time again how resilient we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
After slavery, we had a period of growth.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in the early 1900s, we had a period of growth. And up until the 1950s and 60s, we were strong, family strength and stability.
Mm-hmm.
You can't break down the culture unless you break down the family.
Mm-hmm.
And a strong family works together to create sustainability for that family, meaning a healthy family will go to work and make sure that the family's taken care of. And
Yeah.
abundance is created when you're taking care of your family and you can help others with that abundance. So
Mm-hmm.
the structure of, in my opinion, republicanism of, you know, not leaning on government, leaning on your own self and your own community. Ownership, meaning
Mm-hmm.
living. I mean, I started this session out about living below your means and working hard and saving and buying small things incrementally, creating wealth and value internal. Like that's all. To me, those are Republican principles
Yeah.
because it doesn't mean I pick sides
Yeah.
or I pick winners and losers or let me legislate this community differently than I legislate this community. I
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to that. We're stronger than that. I mean,
Yeah.
I came from a proud, strong line of black people, and I can give
Mm-hmm.
you example of my grandmother being strong and my grandfather working on the railroad. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't subscribe to that government stuff. I do subscribe to stable families and a male that's a head of the home and that's
Mm-hmm.
creating the landscape and the plan for the family. I do
Mm-hmm.
believe in that. And
Yeah.
that is actually more on the Republican side too. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
Republicanism,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I mean, um, that's the side that tends to sell those types of ideas more than the Democrat side.
Right.
Democrats, they're selling something different, and I
Yeah.
think it erodes the strength of the family.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing more Black Americans saying, you know what, I may not like Republicans, I definitely don't like Trump, but if there's other candidates here, I might be willing to hear it. And that's I'm trying to play into that
Yes.
element right there. Like, okay, Trump's not going to be here forever. Personally, I'm like, thank God, but whatever. But like, there's going to be a longer line of candidates who are like, Black people, listen, you can do
Yeah.
this. Evangelical leadership, like, listen, you need to hear from these individuals here. So,
We need more solid, well-rounded candidates of character uh,
yes,
who are also black to
yeah,
run to these seats as Republicans,
yeah,
just to encourage more balance. Because I just don't think that it makes a lot of sense for 80%, plus to vote one way. Like
yeah. Yeah, and
I
I'm
don't know
I'm
if that's
working
healthy.
with that. I'm like, okay, Lord, you got to help me with this one. But like, I just see God really unfolding things and helping me to identify really great individuals. And so, like I said in the beginning
Thank you
of
for your
this,
work.
yeah, thank you so much. I love what you and Janelle stand for. I love your spirit. I love your heart. And I just said, Lord, you got to help me because I got to get them with spiritual leadership. I'm gonna just leave it like that. I gotta get their names and stuff higher on spiritual leadership. So
Sure, sure, no
um
problem.
we're gonna wrap this one up. Like I said, I had such a great conversation with you, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you again. I definitely want to get you and Janelle together one day, but like we'll play with that one on another time. But
Okay,
go ahead and wrap things up. Let us know how we can find you, how we can support you. What is it that you
sure,
need?
sure.
Anything like that.
Sure. We're hot and heavy in the campaign. May 19th is the Republican primary for Secretary of State. Um, Early voting starts, I think, the last week or so of April. So it's coming up real soon.
Yeah.
Again, I'm the only candidate that believes that Our voting system needs to be improved with hand-marked paper ballots. I'm the only candidate that has served proudly in the armed forces. I'm the only candidate that's run a business, and this role is about business, by the
Yeah.
way. And I'm the only candidate that believes that there needs to be a separate entity in the state elections board to provide checks and balances over the Secretary of State's office.
Mm.
I believe in checks and balances.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone should have unfettered power, and this seat is the seat of the people. It's not Raffensperger's seat, and it won't be
Mhm.
Kelvin King's seat when I win. It's going to be your seat. It's going to be the people's seat,
Mhm.
and it's incumbent upon me to answer all the questions from the people because our government was made for the people, by the people, and answerable to the people, as Daniel Webster said. And I believe that. And I want to make sure that people understand that they truly have the power. And you go into that voting booth and you select the right candidate that's going to give you that power. And I think things will start changing. So go to kelvinking.com. That's KelvinKing. You can reach all social media platforms there. You can sign up to volunteer for our campaign, which we can use a few more volunteers. You can donate. We can always use donations. We're hitting a advertising campaign now, hot and hard, and let's just help us drive it through the finish line on May 19th, and then we'll win in November.
Very nice. Well, Sir Kelvin, I just, again, thank you so much for being here. Blessings to you and the missus. Congratulations on becoming grandparents. I know you're going to love it.
Oh man, my
um,
wife is elated.
Yes, yes. So we're going to wrap this one up. Beloveds,
Mhm.
thank you so much for joining us for another episode of We Keep Building. As always, I am, careful to give you only what I believe God is going to do or help us in terms of, the social, political, and economic spaces. We can do things God's way and we can see his results. And so once again, thank you so very much. Blessings to everyone.
Thank you.